Alright guys, I'm going to talk a little bit about DCC decoders, whether Locos are DCC ready or not, what hard wiring actually means, and we'll have a look at some decoders as well and some socket types. But in order to start with, we have to know the fundamentals of what the decoder is actually doing. So, very old Locos and any Loco that we get these days essentially is what we call DC. DC, so this is your motor. You have two wires off your motor, like that, and they connect to your track. Now how your Loco connects to the track simply is through your wheels, which have pickups. The pickups have a wire and go to the motor, and that is how it gets the electric, obviously through your track. So that's DC. So I'll just move that up a bit. DCC will typically have your motor. Again, it has wires coming off, and one a bit orange and one will be grey. That goes to your decoder, and again you have two more wires. One side is red and one side is black, and that feeds up off your track. So that is what happens in DCC. Your wheels feed the contacts, your contacts will go to a red wire which goes to decoder, which in turn orange wire comes out, goes to the motor, and on the opposite side you've got a black, goes to decoder, feeds a grey out, goes to your motor. So red and orange always go together, black and grey always go together. Difference is, obviously in DCC mode is a constant voltage which sends out digital data, goes to the decoder and tells the motor what to do. Whereas in DC it's an analog, which means the more voltage you give it, the quicker the motor gets. There is no digital output. So that's DC, that's DCC. That is the basic concept of what makes your motor go. Right then, DCC ready. And this goes for all the modern Locos that are out these days, except the very tiny stuff like your 08 diesels, your 04 diesels, very, basically the 060 class, they may not be DCC ready. But in generally, all your steamers, your diesels are DCC ready. And what that means is, again, you have your motor, that goes to a circuit board, and then essentially you will have wires out that go through the wheels. Oops, can't draw them now. And it goes to your track like that. And what you do is, on your PCB you may have solder points where you can wire a decoder onto, or you may have a socket on the PCB. Now then, you do have lighting and things as well, I realise this. Basically your PCB has all the circuitry on there which will make your lights go. What they tend to do is, these will actually have what they call a blanking chip on it. And what that blanking chip actually does is it makes the circuit. Essentially what it does is it joins this feed in here to that feed there. Again, this feed here to that feed there. Essentially cutting out the decoder and essentially getting your DC circuit. So that's what they do, and they've got the lighting stuff on the PCB as well. So on the PCB, generally you will have a socket. In Engage, it'll either be a 6-pin socket or what they call Next 18. And I will show you what these look like, guys. When they first went to DCC, we didn't have the standardization of these sockets. So what they actually did is they put 6 solder points on. So what you would actually do is you can get wire decoders, and you would solder the right wires in the right place on the circuit board, and that would make it work. So DC, it's wires straight to the motor. DCC, it's wires to a decoder, then the decoder wires to your motor. But traditionally, DCC ready, better put that on top, has a PCB, and your decoders will either solder up or plug into that board, and that's what makes it ready. And if there isn't a decoder on there, there will be a blanking chip, which effectively makes it into a DC. So that is the difference between DC, DCC, DCC ready. Now you may get some Locos that will say DCC fitted, and essentially all that means is it's got your PCB in it, they've already put the chip on it, job done. Right, when DCC very first started, a lot of people got involved in it, and they soon realised that it needed to be standardised. They need to have certain codes that would be across the board, so lots of different companies could produce stuff for it, and it would all talk to each other. Now, the NMRA, which is the National Model Railroad Association, were very big players in the initial start of DCC. And then you got NEM, which we in the UK call Normal European Modelling Standards, and they all stuck by this. So you could buy a decoder in America, you could buy a decoder in the UK, and it was all to the same standards. So I could buy a 4-pin decoder in America and it would work in a UK train, and vice versa. So for the standards, we have a 4-pin, which is known as a NEM654, the 6-pin, which is commonly known as a NEM651, an 8-pin, which is a NEM652, 21 MTC, which is a NEM660, the next 18, which is a NEM662, and then we've got the plugs. And the plugs come in 3 different sizes. You can get an 8 plug, a 16 plug, or a 22 plug, and they're known as 658s. Now the ones we're interested in for Engage is the 651s, which are the 6 pins. That's the most common. New kid on the block in Engage is the Next 18s, and I'll go into that and I'll explain why the Next 18s are going to start becoming a little more dominant, and why, what's special about them basically. But having said that, other ones can be used. The 8 pins can be used, but only the wiring, and we'll talk about that as well a little bit later. But essentially it's the 6 pins we're going to look at, and the Next 18. So this is a 6-pin decoder. As you can see, like I've said before, orange and red go together. So if you look here, your right rails you feed in, and the orange feeds the right side of your motor. Again, your grey and your black, you got your feed in and your motor. Now then, you've got 2 more pins, and these are known as 2 function decoders. One operates your front headlight, one operates the rear headlight. So these are known as 2 function decoders. because you've got two functions here. So that's your 6-pin decoder. So that's a 6-pin decoder. Now then, you could get a different kind of 6-pin decoder. This again is the same series of decoders. There's lots of different brands out there, but this is still, it's a 6-pin decoder. The pins are on the end of a wire, and again, there you go. The only difference on this one is it has a blue wire as well. Now the blue wire is a common wire, usually common to all functions, but in this case it's just exactly the same colours as what we've got there. If you look here, you put it on that way, you've got your orange, your grey, your red, your black, your white, your yellow, just like in this diagram. So that's actually got the pins on the end. Or the other option is a wired decoder, and that is just standard wiring. If you look carefully at the wires, again you will see they're in the same order as that, nothing on the end. These are what we use for hard wiring, or for the PCBs that have got the solder pads. So that is a wired decoder. Now you could get a decoder that has 6 functions on it. If it's the right size and it fits in your Loco, why not? You could control more functions. Your functions could be your lights. In some cases it might control a servo, or it might control a smoke generator. But generally people want more lighting in the Locos, so they might have one that'll do the night lights, they might have the day running lights, they might have a cab light, they might want to be able to turn off the red lights at the rear to make it more prototypical. So there are options. If you wanted to wire a Loco up and wire the lights and take the time, you could use other chips as well. But essentially this is the 3 kind of chips that you will use. A lot of people aren't bothered about messing about putting their own lighting in and that, but it can be done. Right, this is an old Batman chip, just like that. Again, it's just 6 pins, one of the cheaper chips. It's just an old chip, this. That, you know, so they come in different varieties, and I will show you a blanking chip. Right guys, that is a blanking chip. As you can see, it's got the 6 pins. If you look very carefully on the back there, you see it's just connecting the right pins the right way to make it work. That's for DC mode. People often get confused when they see one of these in, they think it's got a decoder in. It hasn't got a decoder in at all. That's just a blanking chip. If you look on that, that actually has the chips on it, and that doesn't. Try and show you a bit better. Look at the difference there. And again, that has chips on it. It's just had a heat shrink over the top. That is the difference between a blanking chip and a decoder chip. Okay. Right then, I will show you a little bit about the Next 18 chips now. So let's have a look at a Next 18. Right, the Next 18 decoder, as it implies, has 18 different pins on it. So I'll try and take it out a little bit. So on pin 1 we have the track right, pin 2 motor positive, pin 3 is an aux 1, pin 4 is an aux 3 stroke clock, pin 5's a ground, pin 6 is a U+, pin 7 is aux 6, pin 8 is function 0 forward, which is your forward headlights, pin 9 is track left, pin 10 is track left, pin 11 is your motor negative, pin 12 is aux 2, pin 13 is aux 4 and the clock. 14's your ground, 15's U plus, 16's aux 5, 17 is function 0 rear, which is your rear headlights, and pin 18 is your track right. Now what you'll also notice here is on pin 7 here, you can have a speaker. Get rid of that, let's get the right pen. So we can actually have a speaker output there and a speaker output there. This chip will actually let you have 6 functions if you wished. So you could actually control 6 lots of lights. Now it's a very tiny socket, and this is simply why some of the pins are doubled up. For instance, we have 2 pins for the track left. Again, there's 2 pins for your track right, and there's 2 pins for your ground. Now the thought about this when they've actually designed this chip, if you put this chip in the wrong way, it'll be fine, your chip will still work. The lights won't work on it properly, but it will not damage your chip at all by putting it in the wrong way. And that follows suit for the 6 pin as well. If you look at the 6 pin, if that goes in the wrong way, you'll still have your power in. All it means is that they won't be connected up, so it won't move and your lights won't move, but you won't do no damage to that chip at all. That's been well thought out. I will show you a Next 18 chip and a socket. I have not got a Loco that has a socket in it, but let's see if I'm focusing on this. That is the Next 18 socket. This is a Next 18. This is actually a sound chip, and it's that white bit there that we're focusing on. Now why do I think these are the future? This is what I suspect they are currently using in the new Batman 8F. And the reason I suspect it's going to be the future is because it's got more functions on it, so you can actually control different lights on it. And the other aspect is, as I've said before, there's 2 pins out for a speaker. So what that means is the manufacturer could actually wire up a speaker to the PCB. You will literally just plug this chip in and you've got sound. You no longer have to mess about putting speakers in a Loco. And that is why I think this is the way a lot of the Locos are going to go. The more the manufacturer, the cheaper it'll get. And I suspect, in fact, I don't suspect at all, I have seen that some of the 00 models that are coming out take a Next 18 as well. So they're going to take advantage of this. And I'm talking some of the shunters in 00, but that's what they're looking at. And I won't be surprised if they'll come with sound at some point as well. I think that's the way the future's going. So that is what we call a Next 18 chip, and that is very tiny. So we'll have a quick look at some Locos now, and we'll have a look at some other options with your chips as well. Right guys, let's have a look at some Locos then. Let's see what we're facing. Obviously I can't show you a Next 18 Loco because I don't actually have one at the minute. This is a Class 37. It's one of the newer tools, Farish ones, the Batman ones. If you look at this, that's the PCB I was on about. That's your blanking chip. It's just a case of you slide that out, get your 6-pin chip, like say the Batman one, push it in. Now what you'll notice is one end is usually a little mark for pin 1, and you'll notice there's normally a little mark on these decoders as well, and in fact I think that side is pin 1. So you would take that out, plug that in, put your top back on, program it up, job's done. So that's your 6-pin decoder there. I will show you another Loco. This is a class 60, it's a little bit of an older design. You've got your PCB again. Under these clips here, these just pry off. There will be solder pads, and just there is where you would actually wire your decoder up to. I do have a video showing that, and I will put that at the end of the video for you guys. But that is the way that you would actually solder your wires to. It's very fine soldering, guys. So if you're not confident with your soldering, get somebody that can do it for you. That's what it looks like. Again, your PCB's in there, and there your solder points underneath them clips. Those clips are there to make it into the DC mode. Now then, this is an older model. This is class 50 by Farish. Now then, no PCB. Essentially what this does, it's what they call a split chassis in this case. So what that means is that these pickups feed this side of the pickup feeds that side. Then you flip it over, that side feeds that side, that feeds that side. And there's actually a gap in the middle. So your current feeds up this way, your current feeds up that way, and in turn it feeds the motor. You can DCC them, and that is what we call hard wiring. What you've got to do is, if you look here, you've got your feeds in, you've got a decoder, and then your motor. So what you've got to do is you have to split. Like, that's your DC mode, so you have to split that connection somehow. Once you split that, you can then put a decoder in it. So that is what you would need to do. So you have to split your motor from your actual pickup. And there's different Locos, there's different ways of doing it, different techniques. And as I do this, I will be showing you as well what I am doing and how I am going to do it. But that is what we call hard wiring. While I'm actually on about decoders, what you tend to find is that you've always got your orange, grey, red, black, white, yellow. You may find decoders with other colours as well, and they may have more wires on. What that means is that decoder may have more functions, and the blue wire is the common. As long as you remember your orange, grey, red, black are your pickups and your motor. They're the 4 essential ones. The blue wire and any other colour are used for functions, for the lighting, or for your servos, or for smoke generators, solenoids. But you must look at the data sheet of the decoder. If that's what you're looking to do in a Loco, look at the data sheet, see what that can do. Some of these decoders have hidden functions, and I will show you what I mean. Even though this is an old chip, an old Zimmo, all the new Zimmos have it, some of the Lens have it. If you look at the back here, just on the edge here, there are additional solder pads, and this chip will actually let me have 4 auxiliaries on it. That means I could have 4 additional functions on that chip if I soldered them up. So I could actually add extra lighting or various other things. I would have to read the manual to see what those auxiliaries could power. Now, another thing I'd like to talk about is those pins actually will work in a format called SUSI. So we'll talk about SUSI, shall we, next? Right then, SUSI. SUSI, which actually stands for Serial User Standard Interface. Now essentially you use 4 wires. It's got 4 wires. You've got, first wire is a ground, the second wire is data, third wire is your clock, and the fourth wire is power. Now if you remember back to the Next 18 chip, some of the Next 18 chips will have SUSI on them, and if you look here, that has a clock and it has a U plus, that's a data, so this is your data and your voltage. So that is why those pins are actually on the Next 18. What SUSI does is it lets you expand on your decoder. So you could have a decoder which goes to your motor and then goes to your track. So we'll call that your decoder. Now if it's got SUSI on it, it'll let you add another decoder to it. So it'll have 4 wires coming off, and you can actually get different types of decoder. You can get a function decoder, you can get a sound module decoder. So say we could add a function decoder with it. That might give us an extra, say, 8 light functions. So might say, right, so we got 2 light functions on the original, 8 light functions there. Oh, I haven't got enough lights. In theory, if you had the room in your Loco, you could add another function decoder. It has to be to the SUSI standard. And again, this could give me another extra 8 lights. So now I can switch 18 lights independently through my function keys. But I don't want to stop there. What else can I do with it? If I wanted, instead of lights, I might connect that to some servos. If you use a servo, you might be able to do automatic uncoupling on your Loco. I might want to put a smoke generator in my Loco. Again, check the details out and the data of your decoders, but some of these decoders can actually give us power to a smoke generator. Now the other thing it can do, you could actually add a SUSI sound module. So I can in effect add 3 more decoders to the original decoder and give you lots of versatility. To be honest, I am not really sure why you would want to do that. It's quite an outdated system, and with some of the modern chips now, you've probably got the light functions you need, or you've got functions for solenoid and smoke generators. But it is there. This is what SUSI is. Now SUSI will only let you have a max of 3 units, and these can all be controlled through your function buttons. This is a sound module. You notice it has a plug on the end, and it's got the 4 wires. The ground wire is black, the data is grey, the clock is blue, and the power is red. Now then, why has it got a white socket on it? Some come with sockets, some don't. This is a MTC21 chip. It's just something I'm messing with, it's not for me Engage. But that's got a white socket on it, guys. Which literally means I can plug that into my test board. I can just plug that straight in there. Job's a carrot. That's my sound module onto my decoder. In the case of one of these, what you would actually do is you would chop your plug off. Those 4 wires would go onto the correct pads on the actual chip, and you would just solder them on direct, and again you got your SUSI board working. What you often find is, like I've said before, these chips actually have 4 functions, but if you use SUSI it takes functions away. You often find that the aux pins are used by the SUSI. Not all of them, but a few of them. So that's something you need to bear in mind as well. It's always worth looking at the data sheet for your actual decoders. So that is what a SUSI sound module actually looks like. All that's got on it is sound, and it's got 2 wires coming off, and they will simply go to your speakers. So that is actually SUSI sound module. Right, say you wanted to put sound in a Loco. Yes, you could get a sound chip, you could plug it in, find somewhere for your speaker, solder that in as well. You might have to do a bit of grinding. That's what a typical speaker looks like. So for instance, we'll have a look at this one. Go back to the 37. You would have to maybe find a hole in there to put the speaker, or you'd have to maybe get rid of one of the ends, try and mount the speaker in, and then you could plug a decoder into there, solder your wires up to your speaker. Now what I've noticed on eBay is some people are wiring TTS Hornby sound decoders. That's what it looks like. It's actually got an 8 pin in there. Now then, what they do is they chop that off, and this is what a decoder looks like. These wires are short. This is something I've been messing with. If you look here, we've got orange and red, black and grey, we've got our white, we've got a yellow, we've got a green for another function, and we also have a blue, which is the common for all the functions. Now that is the Hornby TTS sound decoder. You will still have to find somewhere to mount that speaker. What you could actually do, or what I suspect they're doing, is they're taking this PCB off. That'll have 2 wires coming up from the bottom. The wires for the lights, they'll be wiring to the functions. They'll be wiring the motor to the wires that are coming up through here. And basically replacing that PCB with that. If you look at this, guys, that is the same width. And it will fit in a body. This is a Class 60 body. And it will fit in there width wise. Look at that. Well, that's a lot of work. They're not brilliant. They do have some nice sounds there. Motor control. Yes, you could probably get a better decoder with better control on them. But if you just wanted a cheap decoder, these things, you're looking at 40 quid. For some of the lock sound or the Zimmo decoders, you could be looking at 120 quid for a decoder. That is the difference. So as you get more experience, you might decide, I'm going to do that, I'm just going to bang one of these in these. I've seen them on eBay and they are charging silly prices for it. Don't know why they're charging so much, but they are. So there's another option. You could add sound to your Loco, take your PCB off, where the original connections are to your PCB, wire them to your decoder. So there you go, guys. That is a bit about decoders.